Hey everybody, welcome to the Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain Show. This is our final episode for 2018. And so I wanted to talk a little bit tonight about some of the key strategies. Many of you are in the process of making a New Year's resolution, or maybe you've already got one. But I'm going to talk about 5 key things, simple things, concise and to the point tonight, because I'm going to go celebrate probably like many of you. So we're going to dive into this, but before we do, I want to know where you're coming from. So chime in, say hello, let me know where you're tuning in from in the world. We've got Ember from Stratford, Canada, and Marianne from snowy Ouray, Colorado, and Christina from Langley, British Columbia, Sandy from Orange County, Cheryl from New Jersey. Happy New Year to you too, Cheryl. And Patricia, where are you from? Tracy from NOLA. Haven't seen you in a while, Tracy. Thanks and welcome back. We got Winter Green from Massachusetts and Misty Rushing from the scleroderma community worldwide. Thanks for tuning in, Misty. I like that. Sandy wants to know what I eat daily. I'll talk about that. Wanda from Tennessee and Marianne from, Marianne saying Happy New Year. And Barbara from Connecticut. Peruse from California. Keep it coming, folks. We're not going to read names all night, but again, that's part of what fuels me, right, is knowing that we're reaching so many people. Remember, our mission at drpeterosborne.com and Gluten-Free Society is to help 100 million chronically sick people find real answers to their health problems. And so to that endeavor tonight, we're going to be diving into top 5 strategies. Why top 5? I mean, we could do top 10, we could do top 20, but what I wanted to do tonight was to create something that was effective for you, something that would have the biggest impact but be the least complex. In essence, these are things that anyone can do. Anybody can start immediately and have a huge or a very, very big impact. So number 1 on the list, very simply put, is to eat less. Now, there are a couple different strategies or ways to look at eating less. A lot of studies show that people who eat 20% less live longer. And there's some research that says people that eat 20% less live 20 years longer, but it's not even the lifespan that we're after as much as it is the quality of life issue. We want a quality of life. So the time that we're here, we want to be here, we want to be fulfilled, we want to be engaged. So eating less has been shown to prolong human quality of life, not just the quantity, but the quality. So very important. Now, some people say, well, how long can you eat less and what does eat less really mean? Well, eating less, basically, let's define that. It's eating 20% less than what the United States government recommends people eat, which is that 2,000 calorie diet. The average 150-pound man eating 2,000 calories a day to get their nourishment. Most people require far less than 2,000 calories. So starting with 20% less would be a good place to start. So 20% less calories than general governmental recommendations in the United States that, based on that 2,000 calorie diet. There's really no great scientific evidence that says that humans require 2,000 calories a day to maintain health and good function. Now, you can go too far on this, and that with fasting, and a lot of people doing, multiple prolonged day fasts and things of that nature, you've got to be careful. If you're doing a 5-day fast, for example, a water fast, you really should be under some type of expert supervision. I wouldn't try going something like that alone. Now, if you're doing a 1 to 3 day fast, those are generally pretty safe, but there are some unique strategies and concerns that you need to have if you're trying to do a prolonged fast. Now, some people do the fast to jumpstart their immune system's reboot and to improve their overall health, but again, it's not fasting every day indefinitely. Eating less is eating 20% less calories overall on a daily basis. And what I recommend that you do is start here. And depending on what other strategies or what other things that you're doing, you may bump that up a little bit. You may keep it at 20% less. You may even find that you don't need even that many calories. So a lot of this is having a place to start. I recommend starting with the 20% rule, eating 20% less calories than you currently do, and seeing how you feel. Now, another strategy on the eat less is not really eating less. It's eating less often, and that's the intermittent fast. So you've got 20% calorie restriction. You've also got the intermittent fast. I like to start people on the 16-8. That's 16 hours of not eating followed by an 8-hour period clumped period in the day where you consume all of your food. You're not necessarily eating less than this, you're just eating less often. We've got a really comprehensive video on intermittent fasting. If you haven't watched it, it's in the Dr. Osborne archive, so make sure you go check that out. We may even have a link if we can get it posted up for those of you who are interested in learning more about fasting for the new year. We can go in more depth in that video. Okay, let's see here. We got Sandy from Marshall, Missouri. Happy New Year to you. Allie from Seattle, and Lang. Lang, where are you from? And Wendy from Georgia, and Marie from Toronto. Lots of Canadians tonight. Oh, love that. The Warrior Bread is delicious. Those of you who don't know, last couple of months we published kind of a pre-sale for Warrior Bread. And so if you haven't picked it up, it's because as soon as we got it, we were almost sold out. We've only got a little bit left. You can go to glutenfreesociety.org or .com and you can pick up your Warrior Bread. But it's a low glycemic, completely grain-free bread mix. And we've got a living cookbook we've developed around it where people can submit their recipes. But we've got about 20 recipes in our cookbook now, ways that you can use it. And so far, the results are coming back and people are just loving it. As a matter of fact, if you've gotten yours, if you're tuning in tonight, you've gotten yours and you've tried it, chime into the feed and let us know how it tasted or how it did for you. Okay, let's see here. So, number 2 on my list this year, very simply, again, these are simple things, is move more. Move more does not mean that you have to go to and join and sign up for a CrossFit gym or a CrossFit box, or that you have to become, a triathlete, or that you have to train for a marathon. Moving more is simple. Where are you at in your life? Are you currently a couch potato where you don't even walk a mile a day? Moving more for you does not mean CrossFit. Moving more for you means working your way up, working your fitness level up. So start with a mile a day. Commit to walking a mile a day. If that gets easy, commit to 2 miles, commit to 3, commit up to 5. The goal here on Move More, ideally, if we're talking about just pure walking, 10,000 steps a day is a good goal to shoot for. Again, depending on where you're at, don't get upset with yourself if you're not here. If you can only do 6,000, but if you're currently only doing 3, work your way up. Again, it's to your capacity to exercise and move. But the problem a lot of people have is that because they haven't exercised in such a long period of time, their muscles atrophy, their body becomes sedentary, and the act of movement itself can become somewhat painful. And so there's times where you've got to break through that initial stage of soreness, that initial stage of pain. But committing to moving more. Now, 10,000 steps is equivalent to about 5 miles. Something else that I consider under movement that you really want to push for is, I like calisthenics. So this is body weight exercise. So body weight exercise, this is push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, squats, lunges, jump rope, box step-ups, or if you can't step up on a tall box, step up on a short box, right? Plank holds, V-ups, just body weight movement. Commit to 8 to 10 minutes a day of calisthenic body weight movement. If you're a kid and you remember doing jumping jacks, right? Something that simple. It doesn't require a lot of strength. It just requires motion and movement. Some people love the rebounding trampolines, these little mini trampolines. You can get on there and you bounce for 4 to 10 minutes a day periodically. Again, commit to moving more. Now, if you're a little bit more advanced, and some of you may be, then commit to being in the best shape of your life by moving more intelligently. So have a strategy behind your movement. Maybe that's hiring a trainer and really working out what your goal is. If you want to have a leaner body mass for 2019, and that may require some additional diet strategy, that may require some additional kind of diving into specific types of exercise that you need to look at doing. So again, these are basics. It can get much more advanced, but move more in 2019. Your body is about 70% water, 65 to 70% water, and stagnant water breeds illness, meaning that if your body is still and it's not moving, that means your blood flow is pumping less, your lymphatic fluid is pumping less, you're detoxing less efficiently, your skin is not acting as a reservoir to get rid of toxins when you're not moving because you're not sweating, and sweating is one of the ways that we detoxify, as is movement of lymphatic tissue and lymphatic fluids. So move more and you'll do very, very well for yourself. Number 3. And this one, probably of the whole list, I would say, is for many of you maybe the hardest, and that's eat at home. Now, eat at home applies in several ways. It doesn't mean sit at home and order like Uber Eats from the restaurant. It doesn't mean sit at home and call the pizza truck delivery. Now, any of you watching the show tonight, hopefully you're not calling pizza truck deliveries and you've read No Grain, No Pain, but eating at home means eating real food. So the caveat here is eating home food, not eating at home, not eating restaurant food that you deliver to the house, but it's eating real food. And so eating real food means organic, as much as where it's possible, but as much as possible to avoid pesticides and other chemical processed additives. It means eating less out of packages, or if you're eating from a package, there should be discernible ingredients that are all foods, as opposed to ingredients that are foods plus things that aren't really food, that are there to either make the food taste differently, make the food look differently, make the texture of the food different. So it's like if you look at Warrior Bread, there's only 5 ingredients and they're all real food ingredients. And that, again, when you're eating at home, eating real food, again, whether it comes out of a package or whether it comes out of your garden, it should be you should be able to look at the label or look at it and understand it is a real food. It's what it's supposed to be. Commit to doing this. A lot of people get sick because restaurant food, if we look at restaurant food contains what? Predominantly, restaurant food is going to have pesticides. You're going to get pesticides in your food. You're going to get added sugar. You're going to get loaded up with canola oil and other processed oils. And this is even from healthier choices. I mean, some of the salad dressing, for example, a lot of your restaurant salad dressings are olive oil that's been cut with canola oil, and they add sugar to the salad dressing so that so that your salad tastes much sweeter. A lot of your restaurant foods, predominantly, unless you're going to an all organic kind of wild crafted restaurant where they're sourcing local food from local farmers, from organic local farmers, it's very, very hard to eat out at a restaurant and maintain a degree of health. In the almost 20 years I've been practicing, the one thing that I have seen hurt people time and time again is when they fall off the proverbial wagon, and instead of preparing their own food, they are going out to restaurants all the time or much more frequently and being exposed to these things much more frequently. Remember, what else happens at restaurants for many people is that cross-contamination. A lot of ingredients at restaurants are either grain derivatives, wheat, barley, rye, but also things like corn. A lot of the restaurants are using corn-based fillers, corn-based ingredients in their meats, etc. And so that's what you're getting when you eat out. You're running that very real risk of cross-contamination. So if you are gluten sensitive, it can be a big, big problem when you're eating out. Okay. Number 4. Before I write this one down, I want to tell you a little bit of story, because I actually recently just finished up. I do a lot of self-hacking and experimentation, just for the sake of experience. I like to know more about how my body works when I do something versus when I do something else. And one of the experiments I just finished up on was I spent a several month period of time not taking any multivitamins. I wanted to see if I could get the vast majority of the nutrients that I needed from the food that I eat. I tend to be a pretty picky eater in terms of eating predominantly organic foods and eating at home. It's very rare that I eat restaurant food at all. It's quite rare, actually. And so I was experimenting to see how I felt, whether I felt better, whether I felt worse, whether I didn't feel any different at all not taking a multi, because generally speaking, I do take a multivitamin. So I spent a couple of months doing this, and here's what my experiment yielded for me, and I just want to share it with you. Number 1, I started to develop tendinitis in my elbows as one of the side effects to not taking my multivitamin. Now, I'm a CrossFitter and I like to work out pretty aggressively, so when you're working out more aggressively, you do tend to need more micronutrition for your healing and for your repair. So for me, I think this is part of what happened, is because I work out aggressively and I wasn't getting in my multi, my tendons and ligaments were not repairing from the demand I was placing on them, and this is part of what started to happen. Number 2, the biggest thing that I noticed is I wasn't sleeping very well. I was not going into deep sleep and dreaming as much, number 1, and number 2, I was not waking up energetic. I was waking up more fatigued and more tired. Now, it took about a month for these symptoms to really start setting in for myself. But those were the biggest things that I noted over the course of a couple of months of not using a multivitamin. Within a week of taking it back again, the tendinitis went away, the sleep improved, and the energy in the day and the first thing in the morning dramatically improved. Now, a lot of people will say, well, what do you need to do? What do you need to take a vitamin for if you're eating all natural, healthy, organically prepared foods? That's a great question. And, you know, that's why it's number 4 on my list, is take a multi. You have to think about how even organic food is farmed today. Even organic food is farmed in soil. A lot of our soils are eroded, meaning even the organic farms, they're doing mass production, mass scale production to be able to have enough of the demand to create the food for the quantity of people who want to buy organic. So you get topsoil erosion, meaning that the soil itself, over time, the more it's used aggressively to produce more and more crop, it becomes less and less nutrient dense. And it can be very, very hard for commercial farming to keep up with the nutrient density of the soil at a manner that's consistent with providing a produce or a crop that is going to yield high nutrient density. There have been a number of studies that show that that conventionally grown or conventionally farmed fruits and vegetables are far less nutrient dense than if you were growing them in your own backyard, using your own compost, making sure you were adding nitrogen to the soil from natural elements, etc., to improve the growth and to improve the nutrition in the soil of what you're trying to grow. So most people, even if you're buying 100% organic, realize you are buying organic from large-scale farms, and that, again, it's a hard thing to do. Now, if you've got your own garden, your own organic garden with your own compost and your own acreage, and you're doing it all by hand, you might be able to get away without doing this. But most of you don't have that, and that's just the reality. Most people don't have a farm where they're growing all of their own food. And so this is one of the big reasons why I recommend a multi. One of the other reasons why, depending on your life throws curveballs. We've got, you've got things that can come and go, that the stress levels can come and go for different reasons, whether it's work stress or job stress or home stress or whatever it might be. But life throws curveballs, and a multivitamin is to me, it's like an insurance plan. I like to look at it as an insurance plan for people who are just trying to maintain good health. And even though they're making all the other right choices, again, we can't always control the environmental stressors. But one of the other things that I recommend taking a multivitamin for, aside from that, is you're getting consistent levels of B vitamins. And again, there have been a number of studies that show that today's food doesn't have those levels of B vitamins if we compare it to food from 30 years ago. One other reason that I'd like to mention, though, is if we look at what happens when people are under duress and stress, they burn through more B vitamins. And so a good multivitamin should contain those B vitamins, especially pantothenic acid, which is vitamin B5, which is also known as the anti-stress vitamin. Remember that in our today's society is a lot more go. It's a lot more hardcore. People are go, 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 go. They sleep less, they work more. But in addition to those things, in addition to sleeping less and working more, we're all being exposed to a lot more chemicals today. We just are. Even if you're trying to control your environment by filtering your air and your water, there are an estimated 30,000 chemicals that we're being exposed to today that we were not being exposed to 50 years ago. So again, your body's got to deal and cope and adapt and manage those chemicals, and one of the best ways to help it do that is to make sure it has some of those essential nutrients that are required to help it within that regard. And if you are drinking any kind of alcohol whatsoever, you should be on a multivitamin, period. Alcohol causes B vitamin deficiency, and so if you drink, a lot of people drink a glass of wine a night or a couple glasses of wine a week, and they start to feel tired and they start to feel lethargic, they start to get the brain fog, crave the sugar, all that, those are all signs can be of B vitamin deficiency. So making sure you're getting adequate quantities of B vitamins is part of what makes a good multivitamin. Let's see here. Questions are starting to come in, and I'll get to those here in just a minute. Let's go ahead and answer number 5. The top on my list is, if you haven't had functional medicine testing, if you haven't gone to see a functional medicine expert, if you haven't gone to a doctor and had specific testing done to determine what you're allergic to, what you're not allergic to determine whether you have vitamin and mineral deficiencies, to determine your gut microbiome, whether or not you have yeast overgrowth or other types of problems, following the No Grain, No Pain diet program, hands down, bar none. It's, this is a book that's based on my almost 20 years of experience, clinical, on the things that actually work the best to take people who are struggling with their health to thriving with their health. So following No Grain, No Pain in chapter 7 and 8, the dietary protocols, following that, look, spend the first 30 days of your new year following that, and you'll be amazed at how much better you feel if you're not already doing that. Now, many of you already are, and if you are, keep going. But one of the things that you should put in your kind of health resolution is, if you haven't had specific testing done to really make your diet and lifestyle uniquely you, meaning that No Grain, No Pain was written based on experience dealing with a lot of sick people, but it's a book that has a lot of generalizations in it about what certain people should be doing or not. But having the right definitive testing that identifies your own unique biochemistry, hands down, is the best thing that you can do to improve your health. So that's something I would highly recommend. If you haven't worked with a functional medicine expert, to get with a functional medicine expert, you can call my office, or you can look up other functional medicine docs and find somebody who's qualified who can run these types of specialized tests to help you identify the diet, the diet that's right for you. So those are my top 5 strategies for 2019. I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions. Any of you that have questions, many of you have already typed them in, are already typing them in, but if you haven't, go ahead and punch those in and we'll get them answered for you. I like this question, so I'm going to back up and answer it. It's, Dr. Osborne, what do you eat in a day? For me, typically, the way I start my day is a workout. I like to work out early, so 5:30 to 6:30. I like to make sure I get a workout in early. And again, that's part of when I was not taking my multivitamin, my energy was really low. I was really struggling trying to keep up with my workouts. But I like to get in an early morning workout on a fast, meaning no food at all. And then I like to fast for up to 4 hours after my workout, meaning I like to spend the first part of my day without eating and just letting my gut rest. And even after a workout, you should have the energy reserve, you should have the muscle tone in your body that you can sustain a fast even after a workout where you're not just crashing to the floor. So my first meal of the day is usually like a brunch, and oftentimes it varies, but some mornings I'll eat eggs. Now, not everybody needs to avoid eggs, but some people with autoimmune disease do. Some people are allergic to eggs. So there's also sausage is one of the other kind of go-tos I like in the morning. There's also salmon. You can go with a salmon in the morning. I find it to be a kind of a good breakfast food, if you will. So those 3 would provide a great source of protein, animal protein. Now, the other thing I really like to do is a nice green salad, whatever's in season, whether that's spinach or arugula or green leafies, different varieties of green leafies. But I'll take that, and again, seasonal nuts. So oftentimes I'll sprinkle on pecans, or I'll sprinkle on almonds, so that I'm getting a good source of healthy fat. And then I'll also take some berries, again, if they're in season, especially like blueberries or raspberries, and I'll sprinkle those over the salad. I don't use a dressing. I don't use an oil. My dressing are my nuts, my shredded nuts, my chopped nuts, as well as my berries. And then mix other mixed vegetables into that salad as well. So depending on what you like, I like zucchini, or you can take, and if you've got a spiralizer, you can spiralize zucchini or carrots so that it's long like a noodle. And for some people, that actually serves for them as a noodle substitute, where they feel like they're getting something noodle-like on their grain-free diet. But again, that's a basic kind of morning for me. And then at lunch, typically, a lot of times I won't eat lunch. I'll just eat a second meal at dinner. Lunch is pretty rare. So I can't remember who asked the question, but at dinner time, it's always some form of animal protein, whether that be chicken or beef or fish, or wild game, and that's mixed with some type of, usually several types of vegetable sides. So the vegetable sides, it's always just a variety, and oftentimes it's what's seasonally growing. My favorite way to eat, if possible, again, this depends partly on where you live and what you have available to you, is to eat based on the season. So when certain things are in season and they're available, they usually taste better. They usually taste fresher. And so we all like to eat food that tastes good. We don't like to stoically just plow through a meal and say, oh, I really didn't enjoy that, but I'm healthy. But part of eating for many people is a social entertainment, and a social joy, and a pleasure that comes from the flavor of the food. And so you can certainly do that by making sure that you're trying to choose things that are in season. And because again, in season means, typically in season means that it tastes better. Let's see here. Best chicken and eggs to eat. Does grain pass through the grain-fed animal meat or eggs? No. No research has shown that, Donna. We can't say that if a chicken eats grain that the grain shows up in the egg or in the meat. We can't say that. We don't have the research that states that happens. And I don't believe that it happens. I really, if you want to think about the best chicken to eat, remember what chickens are. Chickens are jungle birds. Chickens are not birds that are designed to be forever cooped up in small living quarters and fed grain. Just like you're not designed to be shoved in a closet and fed cereal every day for the rest of your life. You would become vastly obese, vastly diabetic, vastly vitamin D deficient. Well, these birds and their health, it's important for them to get out and exercise just like it's important for us to get out and exercise. So when you're looking for your birds, you're looking for free-range organic, meaning that if they are fed any grain at all, that you're at least ensuring that it's an organic grain. And this way you're avoiding the pesticide. Remember, part of it is the pesticide for what you're eating in the egg. The pesticide does go through. The pesticide does make it into the meat. It does make it into the egg. And that's really what you're trying to avoid. But remember, chickens are birds and they can eat grain. Genetically, they're capable of processing and digesting it. And so them eating that is not so bad. It's just that should not be the only food that they consume in their diets. Okay, good question. Let's see. Somebody's asking, is Warrior Bread AIP friendly? Yes, if you make it without the egg. You can use, there are a couple of different substitutes that we have instead of egg, but it is AIP friendly if you make it without the egg. All right, we got Michael tuning in from Germany and Margarita from Portugal. So Europe is representing tonight as well. Let's see here. Bobby from Denton. Welcome, Bobby. Christina, your question is, where can I get more receipted? And I don't know if you mean more recipes. If you want to get more recipes, go to glutenfreesociety.org. There's a big tab at the top in the menu that says recipes. There are about 300 recipes there. If you have a copy of No Grain, No Pain, there's 31 recipes. Those are all recipes from my home to yours. You can also check out our new gluten-free Warrior Bread living cookbook. We've developed a living cookbook, and we have a link up to that. We can get a link up to that for you to check out more recipes. Those are ways that you can incorporate Warrior Bread if you haven't already started. Okay, that was a comment, not a question. What are the best ways to rebuild your microbiome? Is that in the book? It is. It's in one of the last chapters, Patricia. One of the best ways to rebuild the microbiome is to feed it. And what do we feed the microbiome with? We can either feed it things that hurt it, we can feed it things that help it. And fiber and fibrous containing foods is one of the best ways to feed your microbiome. But a lot of people, when they're starting off, because of years of grain-induced damage, pesticide-induced damage, antibiotics, chlorine in their water, the microbiome is very compromised. So one of the best ways to help to kind of start rebuilding it is a high-quality probiotic. Now, I recommend Biotic Defense because we verified that it's grain-free. In essence, many probiotics contain grain-based fillers. And of course, we don't want you to get, if you are following the No Grain, No Pain protocol, we don't want you to get glutened, so to speak. So I recommend Biotic Defense. We have two varieties. We have a standard dose, which comes in a pill, and we have a very strong dose called Ultrabiotic Defense, which comes in a dose that's about 225 billion colony-forming units. And so that's one way to start colonizing your GI tract with healthy bacteria. But really, your diet is where you've got to be solid with your diet, eating real food that doesn't contain agents that act as antibiotics. And a lot of that information, what those agents are in the book, and make sure you go and read about what those are so you know how to avoid them. Carmen says, I did a CRP test and it was very high, 35.2. What steps would you recommend to get the inflammation down? And what could be causing it to be so high? CRP is a very generic marker. CRP stands for C-reactive protein. And it's a generic marker for inflammation, meaning we don't run a CRP and see it positive and say, oh, it's positive because of this or because of that. Generally, it's positive because there's a set of behaviors that you're embarking on, whether it be dietary behaviors or environmental triggers or environmental behaviors, that are triggering that CRP elevation. The CRP is produced by your liver, and it's a systemic inflammation marker. A lot of people will take turmeric, for example, or omega-3 fatty acids to try to bring the C-reactive protein down. And you can do that, and those are smart things to do because they're not hurtful. Taking turmeric and taking omega-3 is not a hurtful thing to do and can be very helpful. Both of them are critical nutrients. Turmeric's a superfood and omega-3 is an essential fat. And your body needs it to regulate inflammation. So for some people, having low levels of omega-3 fatty acids can be the reason why C-reactive protein is elevated. So that really, to answer your question, is it becomes a series, in my opinion, would be a series of testing, things that we would want to look at. One of the tests I would ask your doctor to run on you is your omega-3 index. It's a test called omega-3 index where he actually looks at the level of EPA and DHA and total omega-3 fatty acids compared to your total omega-6 fatty acids and see if there's an imbalance in your omega-6, omega-3 ratio because that can do it. If you just take turmeric in and of itself, remember turmeric's an anti-inflammatory and it may reduce your CRP, but if it reduces your CRP, you still won't know why it's high. So just taking turmeric and ignoring what made it high is a bad move. If you're going to take turmeric, which you can do, and that's a smart move, you also want to make sure you're asking your doctor to run tests to measure for food allergens, for heavy metal exposure, for other things that can elevate C-reactive protein. Remember that an elevation or an abnormal biochemistry marker is generally a sign that something that you're being exposed to or something that you're doing can be that trigger. So you want to figure out what those triggers are and don't just medicate it, so to speak, with turmeric. But yeah, again, taking turmeric's not a bad idea, but don't just take turmeric and ignore asking your doctor to run those other labs. Great question. See, Allie says, my 2-year-old tested negative for celiac through biopsy. Based on her history, I believe she has it. Naturopath says she believes she has celiac, but it's nuance. Where should I go from here? She's still really struggling with her health. Okay, you got to get clarity on this one, Allie. If you really want to know, understand that testing for celiac disease is very misleading because most of your celiac tests, the results won't show up positive until the damage is so great that the active celiac damage it can be life-threatening. In essence, a lot of people don't even, their labs for celiac won't show up positive until they're in a dire state of health. And the other problem with celiac testing is you can be gluten sensitive but not develop celiac disease. That happens to many people. They never develop celiac disease. They develop other forms of autoimmunity. And so if you really want to know about whether or not gluten is an issue, you've got to get genetic testing done. We'll have Alan put that link up in the feed. Genetic testing for gluten is the only real accurate way to determine whether or not somebody does need to avoid gluten or doesn't need to avoid gluten. And we're talking about gluten. We're not talking about the other negative things in grain. We're just talking about gluten. So genetic testing. Right now, I happen to know there's a coupon code you can use, and I'm going to put that on here as well on the board here. I believe it's 2019. If you click on that genetic testing and you use a coupon code 2019 at checkout, I think it's a $40 discount that you'll get if you use that code. So make sure if you're going to order it on her to take advantage of that. We'll help you out in the new year with that. And that goes for any one of you who are thinking about, should I be grain-free, should I be gluten-free or not? I'm not sure. My other blood test showed up negative. I'm kind of confused where to go from here. You've got to get genetically tested. If you really want to know, genetic testing is going to give you that answer, and it's going to be a definitive answer. Sandy says, why no oil on your salad? Why no olive oil? Because I like to eat oil from non-processed foods. So olive oil, remember, even though you can get a healthy olive oil, I'm not saying never eat olive oil. I'm not saying I never eat olive oil. It's just that I minimize the quantity of oils in my diet, because remember that when you break that, when you take olive oil, you extract it from the olive, right? What you're doing is you're breaking open and you're exposing that oil to light and air and other elements in the environment that start to oxidize it and break it down. So it's always better to eat your food in a whole form to minimize any oxidation of fat. Fat is highly susceptible to oxidation, and so that's one of the reasons why I minimize the oil, like in a salad dressing or something along those lines. I'm not saying you can't do it. You certainly can. That's just the way I feel about it as it relates to my diet. Donna says, what are the best nuts to add back in for easy digestion? One at a time. The best way to add nuts back in for easy digestion is one nut at a time. Give it a couple of weeks. See how you do with it. Don't just start bringing in lots of nuts. But any of the tree nuts, almonds, walnuts, pecans, Brazil nuts, hazelnuts, any of those are good options to try to start back in. Christy asked, which vitamin do I take? Christy, I take Ultra Nutrients, and Ultra Nutrients is the name of the multivitamin. It's actually, I designed it, I formulated it. So I like it best, obviously, because it's born from my brain. Ultra Nutrients, we can put a link up to Ultra Nutrients for you. And I think right now, I think we're having a New Year sale right now. I think we have a coupon code for that one as well. I think the coupon code for that one is Energy. So if you want to use that coupon code, you can save a little money when you put in that order as well. Okay. So no egg with Hashimoto and celiac? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that you can't eat eggs if you have Hashimoto's or celiac. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm saying egg is a common allergen, and many people do react to egg. You may or may not need to avoid it. This is where testing can really be the differentiator for you. This is what I was talking about earlier, is get your you diet figured out, right? Get your own unique biochemical diet figured out by having your doctor run the right appropriate testing to determine and rule out whether or not egg is a problem for you. Hey Michael, good to see you, man. Good to see you on the live event here. Veronica, is unsweetened hemp milk plus flaxseed meal a good breakfast for 1-year-olds? No, not in my opinion. A lot of these nut milks are overrated. People, because dairy is a problem, and the way dairy is manufactured and the way dairy is produced in our country and in many industrialized countries, it's far overrated. And a lot of people will gravitate from cow dairy or goat or sheep dairy to the nut dairies. And look, they're overrated. You don't need all of that. Water is the best choice. If you're looking for a healthy breakfast, there are a lot of other options, real food options outside of a flax. I mean, a hemp and a flax is like a double seed meal. And if we're talking about a 1-year-old who probably doesn't have a fully developed gut and their body's still trying to develop, the immune system's still trying to develop, introducing a bunch of nuts at that age, it can be a disaster. It can be a bad thing. Okay, let's see. What are the best ways to digest oil like coconut oil better? Well, it's not an issue of, it's more of an issue of what really is your capacity to digest oil, not what's a better way to digest the oil. Now, I do have a digestive enzyme that's designed to help you with fat. It's more so specifically, it's called Ultra Digest, and it's more specifically for people who don't have a gallbladder, because they're working not with a full deck of cards, so to speak. They don't have their gallbladder, and so it's a lot harder for them to digest fat. So taking enzymatic support can sometimes be helpful because, again, they're missing the organ, they had it removed. But the best way to digest oil is to eat what your body's capable of tolerating. I see this a lot with people on ketogenic diets, is they're over-consuming fat and their bodies aren't digesting it well for whatever reason. Maybe their liver is sluggish or their gallbladder is sluggish. And so actually I did a show with a special guest, Anne-Louise Gittleman, in her book Radical Metabolism. For those of you who don't have that, it's another great book. You should check it out because it talks about fat absorption, fat digestion, and the gallbladder as being a component of where many people struggle with fat or too much fat. So if you're trying to follow a ketogenic diet, one, it may not be the right diet for you. Two, you may have, if your gallbladder or your liver is sluggish, you may not do well with it. And that, again, those would be the things that I would say need to be determined first. Love that, Wendy. Thanks for chiming in. She says, love your book. Been really gluten-free, grain-free, true gluten-free since November 6th when your book arrived. Love it. Love it. Let us know how you're doing, Wendy, as you keep going. Let us know how you're feeling and how you're doing. Let's see here. Yeah, Ultra Nutrients does not have folic acid. We don't put folic acid in any of our products. Now, we do put methylated folate and something called folinic acid, which is a natural form of folate, and it's not the same thing as folic acid. A lot of people get confused on folic acid and folinic acid. My opinion on coffee, it's good for some and not good for others. It's one of those things. Coffee's a legume. And it can be hard on some people's digestive tracts. Can for many people cause reflux and heartburn and other issues. And for many people, it's not the coffee. It's what's being put in the coffee. They pump it full of processed dairy and full of sugar and artificial sweeteners, and it's definitely no good when you do that. But one of the other problems with too much coffee is that it can cause B vitamin deficiency, and some people are caffeine intolerant, so it gives them the jitters and it really ramps up their nervous system. And if you're struggling with digestive issues and you're struggling with a lot of stress in your life, taking in more caffeine is probably not the right move, so you've got to be real careful with coffee. Tiger nuts I do like. Tiger nuts is a tuber. We actually have a really great article on options for grain-free flours, and tiger nut is one of those in that article. We can put that link up to that article if those of you who are interested in learning more about different options for grain-free flours. Oh, so Wendy's chiming in saying that, yeah, they're doing better on the No Grain, No Pain program and wants to know if she can get the link to Ultra Digest. So can we put that link up to Ultra Digest GB for her? Yeah, we'll get that up for you, Wendy, no problem. Okay, let me see here. Andrew said, did I say that we should avoid foods that act as natural antibiotics? No, that's not at all what I said. There are a number of foods that act as natural antibiotics. I mean, a lot of your herbs like thyme and oregano and other things can act as natural antibiotics. I would say you should avoid them in mass quantities for no reason. A lot of people will take excessive, for example, excessive oregano or excessive berberine because they're trying to regulate their blood sugar, and berberine helps to do that. But berberine is a natural antibiotic. So it's not a good idea to take in high doses without a reason. You should always have a reason if you're going to use food-based natural antibiotics, especially when they're supplemented in higher doses and concentrations. You should always have a reason for doing it, and there should always be a time cap on it as well, Andrew. Good question. Let's see. What is my opinion? Jamez wants to know, what's my opinion on enzyme therapy and supplements? Enzyme therapy is great. Depending on what you're talking about enzyme therapy for, there are a number of different ways to go about looking at enzyme therapy. For some, it's about digestion. So taking digestive enzyme support to help improve digestion when the GI tract is compromised by years of bad food decisions, or by potentially by having an antibiotic or other things that it can act as antibiotics. But there are also forms of enzyme therapy that are designed and aimed at inflammation control, cancer prevention, and joint pain. And so like that class of enzyme therapies are generally considered to be, or called, proteolytic enzymes. My favorite brand of proteolytic enzyme is Matrizyme, Matrizyme. So if you're looking at enzymatic therapy, it's very, very safe. You always make sure if you're doing proteolytic enzyme therapy for inflammation, for helping support healthy inflammation in joints, that you're taking it on an empty stomach, because if you take it with your food, it's just going to help you digest your food, which is fine, but if you're trying to take it for the other reason, it's not going to be as effective for you. Let's see here. How to prevent kidney stones. Joseph wants to know, except for drinking more water, eating less oxalate foods, and having no caffeinated or alcoholic beverages, how to prevent kidney stones and natural ways to break kidney stones down. The best way, in my opinion, really to prevent kidney stones, or really to look at stopping them, is first individually is having the stones analyzed first, because there are different kinds of kidney stones. Now I'm going to assume you're talking about the most common one, which is a calcium stone, a calcium oxalate. And with a lot of stones that I see, there are a couple different, well, the big problem, hands down, the largest problem I see with kidney stone formation in people is vitamin D deficiency. When the body is vitamin D deficient, what happens is the parathyroid glands up here in the neck will turn on, and they'll pull or leach calcium out of your bone. Because when your vitamin D levels are low, vitamin D is necessary for your intestines to absorb calcium. So vitamin D turns on the genes in your intestine that says, hey, pick that calcium up from the food and bring it into the bloodstream. When your vitamin D levels are low, you're not absorbing calcium from your food as well, so your parathyroids will leach the calcium from your bone into your bloodstream so that you don't become calcium deficient in your bloodstream. Because if you become calcium deficient in your bloodstream, calcium is a major electrolyte, and you can go into a cardiac arrhythmia. It can kill you having too low calcium. So your body regulates your serum calcium very tightly, very, very tightly. That's why oftentimes if you go ask your doctor to run a blood calcium test, it usually comes back normal, even though you may be struggling with a problem like this. It's because your body, your parathyroids, will regulate the quantity of calcium in your bloodstream very, very tightly. And so again, that's one of the things that we'll see. So as your body is leaching, as your parathyroid's telling your bone to leach calcium into your bloodstream, that excess calcium, if you've got especially a higher oxalate diet, or you've got a microbiome disturbance where you're, and this is one of the other reasons, I'll talk about it in a minute, but where you have a low microbiome, where you don't, especially if you don't have oxalobacter, which is a type of bacteria that helps you break down oxalate when you're eating them in your foods, then what can happen is now you're getting more oxalate from the food that you're eating. You're not capable of breaking it down. Your vitamin D levels are low, drawing more calcium from your bone into your blood. The calcium and the oxalate mix, forming the stone, and that precipitates out, and that's where the kidney issue can come into play. So check your vitamin D level. That would be step number one. Make sure you get plenty of sunshine. Even many of you that supplement with vitamin D, there's nothing wrong with that. Although if you're taking higher doses, I highly recommend you get with your doctor and make sure he's checking your levels and monitoring them, because you can push it too far. You can take it too far. Vitamin D is relatively non-toxic and relatively low toxicity, but again, good judgment, wisdom, and common sense says don't take more than what you need. And if you can get what you need from the sunshine, then definitely that's a better source than supplementation. Okay. Okay. Laura says, if you had to say what alcohol is best to drink, what would you say? Great question, Laura. And all of you getting ready to go to your New Year's parties tonight and tip back the glass and celebrate, the question couldn't be more timely. So it's not an issue so much of which one is best or not. I would say the best one is organic, period, hands down, because alcohol, a lot of your alcohols are grain-based. Whether, there are a few exceptions to that rule, but the vast majority of them, your whiskey, your bourbons, a lot of them, even some of your vodkas are grain-based, and your beers, and a number of the different types of beers, not just one drink. There's so many different varieties, but predominantly grain-based. So don't recommend those. I don't recommend grain-based alcohol, even though if you're drinking spirits, like for example, many people will say, well, yeah, whiskey is gluten-free because it's distilled and there's no detectable gluten. Yeah, you're right. There isn't any detectable gluten. However, you have to remember what else is in that, what is in that grain that is being made. A lot of what shows up in the byproduct of the alcohol distilled spirit is the mycotoxins. A lot of what shows up is the pesticides. So, you can get exposure to those things. So I would say, first and foremost, I don't recommend any grain-based alcohol. And so that leaves us with a few spirit options. One of the spirit options is tequila. It's agave cactus derived. Another one is rum, which is generally molasses derived, which is a byproduct of sugar cane. And then there are a number of others. There are a number of others that are potato vodkas, etc., that can be consumed. But again, if you're allergic to potato, if you're allergic to sugar, those can be problems. And if you have yeast overgrowth or suspect yeast overgrowth, or you have autoimmune disease, I just don't recommend alcohol until you're fully healed. It's just not something I would recommend because of its inhibition process over the liver and its effect on your nutritional status. But again, I would go with a non-grain variety of any hard spirit, and I would look for an organic variety, because what you're going to get if you're not is you're most likely going to get overloaded with pesticide, and that's not good. So that's my answer. I know it's not an exact answer, but that's the best answer I can give you. What do I think about hemp oil? Look, I think just like any other medicinal product, I think it can be used and it has its purposes, but I don't think people should be gravitating toward hemp oil to heal every disease. And I don't think it's a cure-all or a catch-all. You hear there are summits that are going on. A lot of people talk about how hemp can heal everything or anything. Look, that's not true. It doesn't pan out clinically. And you know, I'm not saying that it doesn't help people, and I'm not saying that there aren't people that it hasn't helped dramatically. But what we have to be careful of with any plant-based medicine is that we're not using the plant as a drug to mitigate or mask symptoms. That's a very, very important concept, is that if you eat healthy and have a healthy lifestyle, you shouldn't have to rely on any natural medicine indefinitely to maintain a level of perceived good health. And where a lot of people, they use hemp oil to sleep, they're using it because of their anxiety, they're using it because of pain, and they end up having to use it indefinitely. And you should be able to use it temporarily, figure out what's creating the problem, and withdraw yourself back from that oil. And if the symptoms come back, you haven't figured it out yet, and that's when you really need to get with a good functional medicine practitioner and get it figured out. I think I answered that one, Pamela. It was a question on multivitamin brands. Eugene wants to know where I live. I live in Sugar Land, Texas, just outside of Houston, Texas. So, great state of Texas. I think, yeah, lots of you asking questions about good brands of multivitamins. There's two brands I recommend. One, and one really, Ultra Nutrients is my favorite, but I have another one, and it's called Multi Nutrients. And that is, it's a different design. If the formula is a little bit different, it's higher in certain B vitamins on purpose. Generally, when I have somebody who has neurological types of symptoms, we'll use that higher dose of certain B vitamins to support neurologically. So multi-nutrients, if you're dealing with neurological or you need neurological support, that formula is more designed for that type of individual. Let's see here. Oh, I like this question. Jamesh says, can you become dependent on enzyme therapy? No, you can't. Look, if you eat food, there's enzymes in your food, period. If you take an enzyme, there's enzymes in the supplement. Your body will not downregulate its own production of enzymes because there's food in it, because there's enzyme in a supplement or enzymes in a food. Your body's going to produce enzymes on demand for digestion. So it's not one of those things like melatonin, where if you take too much over too long a period of time, you'll downregulate your brain's own production of melatonin and create sleep issues. Enzymes are very safe to take long-term without creating an enzymatic deficiency of your own body's natural production. Let's see here. I'm going to answer this differently because the question's coming in. Can my daughter take your multivitamin? MTHFR mutations, yes. If it's just an MTHFR mutation, there's nothing wrong with taking that multivitamin, either one of them. Does Ultra Digest take care of the heaviness of food sitting at the base of the gut? It can. It depends on why you have the heaviness. There are different reasons why that can be the case. But if your reason is that you're having a hard time digesting fat, yes, it can help with that. Carmen wants to know about MCT oil. I think it's overrated, and I think too many people are using far too much of it and using it in a very highly processed form. So it's not that it's not that you could never use it. I would recommend, if you're going to use it, make sure it's from an organically derived source, and make sure it's packaged in a dark glass bottle where this light doesn't photooxidize it. All right, let's see here. I think I got all the questions. I don't see any more in the feed, so unless my feed's just not giving them to me. So let's wrap it up. So again, before we end tonight, you make sure that you share this video, especially if you know people that have New Year's health resolutions. Our goal is to reach 100 million people. I need your help to do that. That means sharing, that means liking, that means commenting, that means subscribing. If you're on YouTube, make sure you click the little bell down there to make sure you get our live updates and when we go live. We've got a whole lot of new stuff planned for you in 2019, a lot of really great and neat things that we're going to be doing with video. And so make sure you subscribe so that you get notified when we're doing those things. And if you're on our Facebook, same thing. Make sure you're subscribing to that feed and make sure that it notifies you on your desktop or on your phone when we're planning on going and launching a live video. So share, like, comment, and have a very, very happy new year. Looking forward to 2019 and spending some quality time with you all, helping guide you on the right path in your health. Have a great evening. Don't drink too much, and be careful and stay safe.